Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. I hope you are all happy and healthy, doing the things you love. With those that you love doing them with, please do me a favour, guys. Smash the like button for me on the video. Hit the like button on the channel via the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topic. And it's horrible today. Really gloomy. You haven't got to adjust your lighting. It's just this gloomy, horrible, feels like midwinter again, but it's not. The green shoots of rediscovery of form are happening at Tottenham Hotspur. Angeball in the last 45 minutes was a wonderful thing to see, wasn't it? When everything clicks at Tottenham Hotspur with the system, it's just beautiful. We play teams off the park. It doesn't happen too often. It hasn't happened too often this season, especially in the second half. However, it is a beautiful thing to witness when it goes right. And I think, as I've been trying to say over the last couple of weeks, the Crystal Palace game was another example of this. I don't necessarily subscribe to this idea that when things aren't clicking on the pitch, that it's always, Ange's tactics that are wrong. I think that sometimes the tactics are right, but it's the implementation of it, the wavelength, the chemistry that the players have with each other that sometimes isn't quite figuring itself out in real time. And consequently, you have moments where you have sloppy passes and players aren't kind of coming back and looking at the peripheral, getting involved in the play when the ball is not directly near them. I mentioned this about the Crystal Palace game in the first 70 minutes. I felt like the wingers weren't taking advantage of coming and running from deeper like they did against, or like Chelsea did against us, to break the high press, high line, but compressed game. And I think more and more we're seeing teams now who have a propensity and an ability to break hard and fast, teams with pacey forwards, like an Aston Villa, and certainly Oliver Glasner's style of management as well, from what I understand, is very similar to Unai Emery's, in as much as they spend a lot of time using exploitative systems. I was using this analogy on the live stream yesterday. Well, I play a lot of poker, and there's two different styles of poker at the highest level, the very highest level. You either do game theory optimal, or you do exploitative techniques. Game theory is where you just basically have understood the math and you're working on probability, and it doesn't really matter what cards the other teams have. You're playing your cards, the other players have. You're playing your cards, and you're trying to, if your maths are correct, then your sizing, your weighting, your decision making of when to call, fold, bluff, all that stuff should all be leaning towards a better outcome in the long run when you take out the variance. With exploitative poker, you're not really playing your own cards so much. You're playing what you think the other cards of the other players have, and you're trying to utilize your skill set to pick up on tells and the weaknesses in other players' games. And sometimes the best poker games can be where you have a mixture of GTO and exploitative techniques at play. And I think that's a kind of a decent metaphor, or a decent way of looking at, certain managers in the Premier League versus others. Angeball is a GTO manager. He doesn't really care about how other teams are going to set up. I'm sure there's some dedication and some consideration of it, and there's some tweaking, in the minutiae. But overall, it's about us. Figure out our system, and even if there's going to be vulnerabilities and weaknesses in the short term, it's more important to embed the philosophy and ride out the variance, knowing that in the long run you're going to be better off than there is going from pillar to post and from one extreme to the other in your tactics, when the team haven't had enough time to really learn the one specific tactic yet. Whereas you have managers like Unai Emery who are very happy to pivot from a back four to a back five and then back to a back four again in the next game or in the same game, to play, two in the middle, three in the middle, three up top, whatever, high line, low line, counter press, all out gung-ho. He'll do anything that he wants to do depending on how he thinks it will suit against the opposition. Exploitative tacticians. And I think that more and more what we're seeing of late is teams that have managers that are considerate of Angeball are more likely to play a back three, and are more likely, if possible, to play a high line and compress the game into that midfield or into a third of the pitch, wherever that might be. As I said on the post-match reaction yesterday, when Tottenham have the ball, Villa and Palace both held really high lines. When they have the ball, Tottenham have really high lines. And when there's scrappiness in the middle, everybody is crammed into that midfield third, with the exception of the goalkeepers. And consequently, you have scenarios where it's going to be scrappy. And yesterday was a scrappy midfield battle, at least in the first half. It really was. You could see that there was nothing wrong with the tactic on either side, but it was a bit of a kind of stalemate because no one could get on the ball. Both teams were impressing their press as their main tactic. And because everyone was crammed into a sardine can, there was no space and no time for anybody to get their foot on the ball and to kind of create those magical moments. That's why you saw John McGinn trying to do it, and when he did have success breaking the press, Villa had their chances to break. All it took was a cheeky, like a kind of side heel, whatever you want to call it, like a drag over to beat Bissouma once and then go. Maddison was forced to come deep because of any of the players in our team. He's the one with the quickest feet and the most ability to break that stuff. Even though he'd rather be doing it at the top end, he felt like he needed to do it in the deep in order to kind of to create things. It didn't really work in the first half, and if that's something we're going to see more and more of, then again it goes back to the questions around what do you need in the summer. Do you need a specific monster six that can do certain things? Do you need technical players that are going to be able to operate in that super compressed zone? Variety is the spice of life. It's not going to happen every game. Tottenham are going to play 38 games next season in the Premier League and hopefully 20 plus in the competitions combined. And so you're going to have a system and you're going to have a variety of opponents and a variety of different styles. And so you're going to need to have a player that can do that really well, but you're also going to need to have, someone who can handle the physicality of the midfield battles when that's the kind of dominant force, dominant factor. And I think that yesterday it was a lot of physicality with Douglas Luiz and John McGinn in that first half. They're not afraid to throw their weight around Aston Villa. And there's lots of other teams that are willing to do the same. And Tottenham, we've got Bergwijn coming in. We don't know what level he's really like, but he looks like someone who's got all the craft and the creative techniques. And maybe that's one of the reasons why he was thought as it was worthwhile selling the story to him that you're going to be part of the first team immediately, because maybe what he can offer is something that's a very unique skill set to unlock certain teams in frustrating environments. But for me, as I said, Angeball, when it's not working, it's not necessarily because the tactics are wrong. Sometimes it's just the wavelengths aren't there. And I think in the first half, as much as I thought Sonny was brilliant in the second half, as much as I thought Maddison was much better in the second half, as much as I thought everybody in the second half was 10 times better than they were in the first half, you still have to acknowledge that the first half was sloppy and scrappy and there was poor decision-making. Either the pass was loose or the runner chose the wrong direction and there was just the chemistry and the communication. But in the second half, everything clicked. And it makes you wonder why. What was it that was said at halftime? Why is it that we always have to have this second half rally? Now, I haven't yet, as of yet, I went to bed early last night, but I haven't as of yet seen Angie's quotes. But I did watch a post-match interview with James Maddison, who said a couple of interesting things. First of all, he said, look, it's part of our game now. We seem to be a team that plays better in the second half, scores a lot in the second half, and very often a lot late. So I don't know whether or not that sort of concept has seeped into the zeitgeist, the consciousness of the players now, where they feel more confident in the second half because previous second halves in the season is where they've had lots more juice from the squeeze. Is it something where James Maddison and his teammates know they feel more confident the second half is when they come alive? And if so, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I'll tell you what it might be. It might be something that other teams look to exploit in the future. They might change their tactics to adapt to that recognition that the Tottenham players and the Tottenham team recognise that they're better in the second half than they are in the first. So, an interesting insight, I think. Second thing that James Maddison said was that Ange Postecoglou didn't say to change anything. He said to keep going as it was. He said that he noticed that Aston Villa looked tired, looked a little bit leggy towards the end of the first half, and that if they kept going as they were, it would soon pay dividends and get their fruit. And for me, I think that's brilliant insight from Ange because it absolutely happened. And I didn't think it took for the John McGinn foul for that to come again to fruition. I think that the team had already started the second half with such an absolute thunderbolt of an opening. The energy levels were far higher, and you sucker punch Aston Villa twice to the gut in short succession. Their heads drop. They've been punished for sloppy, sleepy starts to the second half, and then the frustration boils over for John McGinn, and then they go down to 10 men, and after that they're chasing shadows, and it's a matter of time before we get the third and the fourth, and it might have taken until later on in the game to get them, but it always felt comfortable. You know, no one has gone to Villa Park this year and done that. No one has. And Villa really looked off the boil. Now, was it because they're tired from the midweek exploits? Is Unai Emery playing too many of the same players in too many games, too many minutes? Are they running out of steam? Well, I don't really care about the answer to that, to be honest, because they're not my concern. But I'm happy if that's the case. But I'm also happy if it's not the case, and it just meant that Tottenham outplayed Villa Park at their own ground, a place where Arsenal have gone and lost this season, and Manchester City have gone and lost this season. You know, I think until the Sheffield United game, I think when they got a lucky 1-1 draw at the end, Villa. Before that, I think they were 18 wins on the bounce at Villa Park. So it's not an easy place to play. But Tottenham have always had good form there. So that's why I was confident going in. And it makes you confident going into the Chelsea game. If we can take that second half performance and kind of duplicate it or replicate it for the likes of the Palace game, you know, Newcastle, we've got to go there, even Liverpool towards the end of the season, then who knows? You know, who knows what could be possible? And look, I'm going to say this more tongue in cheek before you jump on me. But let's just call a spade here. We're 11 points behind Arsenal with a game in hand. If we win that, we go 8 points behind. We've got to play them. If we beat them, we're 5 points behind. They've got to play Liverpool or City. If one of those games is lost for Arsenal, then they're 2 points behind. Maybe there's method to the madness of Ange saying until it's over, it's not done. We're not fighting for top four. You know, stranger things have happened in life, not in the Premier League. But I mean, look, we got to keep fighting for every point. The top four isn't secure yet, but it looks a lot more healthier than it did, or than it would have done had we been on the wrong side of a drubbing or on a loss yesterday. The goal difference takes a swing to our advantage as well, and now we can look forward to going to Fulham, which I'll be at that game on Saturday. Where it's going to be another test, another set of, you know, managerial insights and tactics that we're going to have to play around. And again, I don't expect Tottenham to change. I expect Tottenham to do their thing, and whether or not, you know, Fulham can find a solution that overcomes it. But I would expect similar things. I would expect a back three if they want to do that, and I'd expect a compressed midfield, because that is the system that seems to be popular with teams that have managers that like to find ways to exploit Tottenham's methodology. So the overarching theme from me right now, guys, is that, you know, I couldn't be happier with what we saw yesterday, taking into account all of the kind of context of the situation, the magnitude of the game, if you like, and the potential ramifications for everyone's seasons. I think Tottenham did everything perfectly, and the most interesting part about it was that, according to James Maddison, there was no mammoth team talk, some rising call to action from Ange, like we assume, I think a lot of us assume that there has been, which is the responsibility or the reason, the rationale for why our first half performances are a little bit lacklustre and our second halves are better. According to James, Ange is just saying more of the same, it's going to come. Which, again, leads me into this idea of this notion of, but does the team have this idea in their head then that don't worry about the first half, or we're better in the second half and that's where the confidence is? And is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure, but can it be exploited? For sure it can. And so, I don't know, more things to think about, more things to discuss this week on The Devil's Advocate and on episode 2 of On the Other Hand. I'm bringing on another Levy out enthusiast. You know, I want to make sure that everyone because, you know, I've defended the devil a few times in the last couple of weeks, but I want to make sure that all sides of all arguments that want to be held are heard. And so Billy Cairns goes to home and away, goes overseas. He reached out and wanted to come on, or I invited him on if he had a different take on it, and so we're going to hear him out as well. So I look forward to that. And a few more live streams as well. I'm also going to bring back the members fan show, which I think I'll be doing this evening, guys. So keep a lookout for that, and hit the notification bell as well. And I will see you on the next one. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, bye-bye.